Joining me now to discuss, Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski, a Democratic representative for Illinois. Congresswoman, thank you for being here. You just returned from some time back in your district, which employs many federal workers, and I'm sure you heard from a lot of them. What is the sense on the ground? What are they saying?
Yeah, I think people are really concerned and worried. I mean, one of the things I think people don't appreciate is that 85% of the federal workforce actually resides outside of the D.C. area. In the 13th district that I represent, I have 9,300 members of the federal workforce that live in my district. These are our neighbors. These are folks that are delivering our mail. These are people that are working within the VA administration to make sure that veterans are getting the health care that they deserve. And so what I heard when I was at home is just a lot of panic, a lot of confusion. There's a lot of confusion, as you covered, some of the email communication that Elon Musk has put out, and then conflicting information about what those emails mean. And quite frankly, it's a lot of bullying, I feel like, that's happening with the federal workforce. So a lot of concerns that I bring back to Washington.
You served as Chief of Staff at the Office of Personnel Management during the Biden administration. What would it look like if you were on the receiving end of that hr@opm.gov email and you were flooded with all of the responses from hundreds of thousands, in some cases, federal employees? How possible is it even to take the accounting of who responded and who didn't respond and then notifying them of their termination?
Well, exactly. Not only is it confusing, but what you're seeing is this administration is actually making mistakes. First let me say that when I had the opportunity to serve as Chief of Staff at the Office of Management and Budget, I served firsthand the professionalism, the thoughtfulness of the federal workforce, and the fact that they would be bullied as they are being right now and getting these emails is really just horrific. But what I would say is that this administration, in their rush to make these decisions, are clearly making mistakes. You saw that at the CDC, you saw that at the USDA. One of my big concerns, because I serve on the House Agriculture Committee, is the rising cases of bird flu. What you saw is this administration, again, fire scientists within the CDC and the USDA that are going to combat this public health crisis. So a lot of mistakes, I think, are being made.
And my apologies for mixing the acronyms of OPM and OMB early in the morning. I do want to ask about some of the feedback that your Republican colleagues are getting, because there were several town halls that have now been receiving a lot of coverage. And in some of those cases, we've seen voters say Congress is supposed to be the check and balance. Where is Congress in all of this? Do you get any sense from your Republican colleagues that they are beginning to start to oppose some of these moves, or at least the way in which they're conducted?
Well, I think you're seeing some Republican senators, even some Republican House members, that are saying this is moving too fast. You're seeing them speak to some of the cruelty with which the federal workforce is being handled. I think there are some real concerns on both sides of the aisle as it regards to Elon Musk and how this administration is carrying out looking for efficiencies. Look, I would say, as a Democrat, I support looking for efficiencies. I support us looking at our federal spending and where we can maybe find some savings for the American people. But the way this administration is doing this, almost literally with the chainsaw, is too much for the American people.
There's been a question of to what extent DOGE will be a galvanizing force for Democrats going forward, at least in advance of the midterms. And billionaire Mark Cuban was a big supporter of Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. He campaigned for her. But he's also been vocal about Democrats' own messaging and where he believes it should go. I want to get your reaction to what he said. Here's Mark Cuban.
If you gave the Democrats a dollar bill and said you can sell these for 50 cents, they would hire 50 people to decide if they really to try to figure out how to do it, and then would not know how to sell a dollar bill for 50 cents. If you gave it to Donald Trump and said, sell this dollar bill for $2, he'd figure out a way, right? He'd tell you that $2 bill is huge. I learned that the Democrats can't sell words.
So harsh words from a stalwart of the Democratic Party, but is there some truth in it?
Well, look, what I would say is what I just said before, is that we can find efficiencies, we can find ways to cut red tape. I've actually introduced bipartisan legislation on the House Veterans Affairs Committee to cut through some of those red tape that exists within the VA to help veterans get easier access to care. I think we can, as Democrats and Republicans, be looking at those types of efficiencies, but that's not what this administration is doing. You know, we saw just yesterday another round of layoffs at the VA. I serve on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, 1,400 more people to be laid off. And what I'm thinking about on that committee is when we're trying to address veteran suicide rates, when you're cutting jobs from folks that are actually answering those suicide hotlines, how is that in the service of our veterans?
And not an agency that's ever been accused of being overstaffed or overfunded.
It is understaffed, actually.
We appreciate it. Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski, we really appreciate your time
Thanks
this
for
morning.
having me.
Thank you so much.